In the mid-90s, before we had Little Kim, Foxy Brown, and a whole gaggle of sexy black female entertainers, we had Adina Howard. Adina was the ultimate R&B pinup girl who served not only strong vocals, but intense sexual prowess with her highly suggestive songs and performances. Known for her unapologetic style and powerful voice, Adina carved out a unique space in the music industry. And we'll explore her fascinating journey, filled with highs, lows, and everything in between. Learn how her sexy image caused her to be disrespected by men and older women in the industry, as well as how she ultimately lost her career going up against a very important figure. We'll also learn the very weird yet funny reason why her marriage ended in divorce. So let us take a ride with Ms. Adina Howard, and yes, that's pun intended. Adina Marie Howard was born on November 14, 1973, which makes her a Scorpio. And what are Scorpios usually known for? Well, one of their many traits are being super freaky deaky, and Adina Howard lived completely up to her zodiac sign. Growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, for a while, she grew up with both parents in the home. Her father was a furniture maker and main provider, while her mother was a stay-at-home mom and cared for Adina and her siblings. She was surrounded by music and developed a passion for singing at an early age. Influenced by artists like Patti LaBelle, Minnie Riperton, and Whitney Houston, Adina knew she wanted to make her mark in the world of music. She was even highly inspired by fellow Michigan resident and highly raunchy artist Madonna, and you could see Madge's sexy, bold influence in Adina's career later on. After Adina's father, who was an alcoholic and substance abuser, left the home to be with another woman, her mother divorced him and took her children and moved them to Phoenix, Arizona. This move was a culture shock to Adina, who was used to getting loads of attention back in Michigan. But in Phoenix, it was crickets. But that didn't last very long. Adina started to take her musical goals more seriously, as well as her developing an insatiable sexual appetite. Both of these things would help propel her to the top. While in Mesa, Arizona, she gained the attention of manager-producer Levio Harris, who helped her record some demos and later landed a deal with Max Goose through Mecca Don Chas East West Records. And soon Adina was about to crack the industry open through not only her vocals, but her sexy butt crack. Adina burst onto the music scene in 1995 with her debut single, Freak Like Me, and the song was an instant hit. The song reached number 2 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks, as well as number 2 on the Billboard Hot R&B Singles chart for 4 weeks, and was certified platinum. Fans could see with songs like My Up and Down, You Got Me Humpin', Horny for Your Love, If We Make Love Tonight, and of course, Freak Like Me, that her debut album was an anthem of sexual empowerment and independence. Showing a woman can show her sexual dominance in the same way as men and be unapologetic about it. And as successful as she was after her album release, it did not come without its share of issues. As we know, we live in a male-dominated world that's overrun with misogyny. Men are absolutely allowed to be as promiscuous as they'd like, and they never receive any backlash for it. But when women do it, she is marked with the scarlet letter and viewed as a whore. And Adina was no exception. Because of her sexy, vulgar image and raunchy lyrics, many men saw her as an easy conquest and whore that they could pump and dump. But Adina let it quickly be known that wasn't it, and this ain't that. Here's what she had to say about her experience with the disrespect.
In our society, women, again, are perceived as being, the timid ones, the passive ones, we're only sensual and sexy when men want us to be sensual and sexy. And I just refuse to fall into that category and be controlled like that. Because if guys can do it, I can do it too. And regardless of what the females thought, and what the guys even thought, because, there were some guys that said, okay, she's a hoe, she's easy, she's promiscuous. And it was like, no, if that's your perception of me, then that's my perception of you. And, I'm gonna call a spade a spade.
The older women weren't very fond of Adina's provocative image as well. C. Dolores Tucker said she found Adina's album cover to be pornographic and reprehensible, and Adina was shaded by one of her favorite jazz singers, Nancy Wilson.
I remember being excited. I remember just being elated to see her because I was a fan. I love her, even to this day, I love her voice. I just thought she was so just amazing. And to meet her and introduce myself and to get the response that I got, it was like, wow, didn't expect that. Okay. It was awkward. But at the end of the day, it still did not, like, it didn't stop me from saying, like, yo, that's Nancy Wilson. She don't like my music. That's Nancy Wilson.
Needless to say, none of this stopped Adina from being herself. As a sexually liberated woman, like her predecessor, Madonna, Adina couldn't and wouldn't be controlled and didn't concern herself with the opinions of others. That type of attitude was good for going after her career endeavors, but that stubbornness also caused her to lose the same career she was trying to maintain. During her rise and the making of her second album, Adina began to date fellow R&B star Juanye Morris of the group Boys to Men. Problem was that Juanye was already in a very inappropriate relationship with teen singer Brandy, who was also Adina's label mate. Sylvia Rohn, a very high-powered music executive and ultimately Adina's boss, heard about Adina and Juanye's affair, and she told Adina to end it. Could it be because Brandy was such a cash cow for the label, and they didn't want her to be unhappy, that Sylvia even felt the need to get involved? Perhaps, but Sylvia wanted Adina to solely focus on her career and seek longevity in the business. She demanded Adina break up with Juanye, but the headstrong 22-year-old would not do so. And not only did she disobey Sylvia's orders, but she also badmouthed her and Brandy on Wendy Williams' radio show. This was a big mistake because Sylvia had a lot of pull in the music industry, and immediately she started to have Adina slowly blackballed. She completely put a halt on Adina's second album.
Said something very inappropriate about the head of the label, and she pulled up the emergency brake, shut everything down. And rightfully so, because, you know, when you got the power to do that.
Trying to save what little bit of her career she had left, Adina, thankfully, scored a hit with rapper Warren G with their song, What's Love Got to Do With It? The single was another hit for the two, peaking at number 36 on the Hot 100, number 32 on R&B, and number 2 on the UK charts. That same year, she collaborated on a track with Something for the People titled Damned If I Do, which appeared on the soundtrack for the Martin Lawrence film A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. She also recorded the song For the Funk for the Sunset Park soundtrack. During this tumultuous time in her career, Adina found friendship in a man by the name of Sherman Jordan. He'd eventually become her backbone later on. They eventually became an item, and in 2011, the two married. But even though she was still busy, the repercussions of Adina crossing Cynthia and Brandy was starting to really take effect. In 1997, her second album, Welcome to Fantasy Island, released the single Freak and You Know It, which was a moderate hit but ultimately flopped. The audience felt like it was too similar to her previous work and didn't show any growth in her work. It was like, we get it, Adina, you're a freak, but what else you got? The album was quickly shelved and didn't see the light of day until it was leaked on the internet a few years later. But one of the songs that was leaked from the album was a sexy track called T-Shirt and Panties. This song was written by Jamie Foxx and was put on the soundtrack for the movie Woo. Adina stayed afloat by doing live performances and gigs, and she also did a handful of film work, a lot of which weren't even released. By 2004, Adina released her third album, The Second Coming, on Roughtown Records. There was a video made for the first single, Nasty Grind. The video featured Adina topless and covering herself while she sang. Because the video played on BET during early morning hours, the album flopped due to lack of promotion, and she was later sued by her label for a whopping $10 million. There was a second single called Outside the Club that was slated to be released, along with a remix album, The Second Coming Remixed and Uncut, but they were both canceled after she left the label. Her fourth album, Private Show, was constantly delayed by her new label Arsenal Records. When it was ultimately released in 2007, it also flopped. Because so many of her musical endeavors were thwarted and flopping, Adina knew she had to make a change immediately. Instead of focusing on the music industry, she decided to go to culinary school and get her associate's degree in the culinary arts. She became a very successful chef in the Phoenix area. Thinking music was completely behind her, and while she was busy living her new life, fans began to reach out to her. They let her know that her presence in the music industry was missed. Soon Adina began performing in different gigs again, and in 2017 she released another album entitled Resurrection. Unfortunately, this was the same year that she and her husband Sherman divorced, and funny enough, you won't believe why they did. But actually, if you see Adina's prowess, you probably could kind of guess why. Adina Howard did an interview where she discussed the dissolution of her marriage and the quite humorous reason why her husband decided to end it. She stated that her ex-husband Sherman divorced her because she wanted sex 3 times a day. Ever since Adina was very young, she had a very intense and very high sex drive. I mean, her songs display that side of her very well. She gave the warning, so when she got married to Sherman, she found out that he could not keep up. As we've all been informed, Adina tells us she's a freak and that she ultimately needs it morning, noon, and night. She brags that she has the drive of a teenage boy. Sherman thought he was just as freaky as his wife, but learned he could not best her in the bedroom department, so he had to let her go. Here's what they both had to say about the situation.
I got married because I wanted to be able to have as much sex as I wanted to. I got married for sex, only to have a borderline platonic marriage. That created a lot of tension and conflict between he and I. Because in his mind, he was like, well, why do you want it so much? And I'm like, well, why don't you?
Man, I'm going to tell you, I thought I was a freak. She's like the Energizer Bunny. They didn't want it all day, every day, the next day. If there was 9 days in a week, she wanted that 8th, that 9th day.
I need it in the morning as my cup of coffee, and I need it at night for my sleeping pill. But if I can get it in between morning and night, I'm like, that's the icing on the cake. I have the sex drive of a teenage boy.
Wow, it seems Adina's insatiable desires ruined both her career and her marriage. Even though they divorced in 2017, the two remain great friends. So we can see Adina's impact in the industry on newer artists like Meg Thee Stallion, Chloe Bailey, and Cardi B. It's just a shame that she wasn't able to capitalize on her own image in music long term. But she definitely made an impact. So lurkers, what do you think? Do you think Adina should have dumped Ye, or was it no one's business? Do you think Sherman should have divorced her because of her sex drive? Let me know down below.